Now we're live. So again, so sorry. We had some technical difficulties this morning. This is welcome to Talk About It Live. My name is Manny Rodriguez. I'm here with Frank Lopez. Good morning, Frank. How you doing, bro?
Hey, morning, bro.
I think we already started into our tacos this morning, which, by the way, we got from San Felipe Greek Cafe there on Vidal with Freddie Martinez. So I got the machacado con frijoles and. I think you got just egg and bean.
Egg and bean, puro protein.
Puro protein. So, but we only wrapped in a tortilla, so that's okay, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
So.
It's good, brother.
But we want to welcome you again to Talk About It Live, where we're going to be discussing today's issues, of course, that are plaguing, or not actually plaguing, but affecting, in some cases, plaguing, I guess, our nation, but affecting us all as Americans and Texans. We're coming right here from Del Rio, Texas. And we just want to welcome you to the show. Again, like I said, I'm Manny Rodriguez, and again with Frank Lopez, and so we're pretty excited about this initial broadcast, and hopefully we can continue to do this as a weekly basis.
Sounds good, bro. I've been doing some stuff on my own since I retired, and U.S. Border Patriot Live, and so I invited Manny over. Afterwards, my son Seth, who was helping out with some of the technical stuff, he came on and said, "Bro, hey, you guys did well together," and so we talked about it. And then you reached out and said, "Hey, man, let's do this." So we were kicking back and forth a name, and then Seth said, "Hey, what about Tacobout It?"
Yeah.
What about Tacobout It?
Actually, I like that. I actually passed that on to a few people I know. They're like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool tagline." Talk About It Live, and so tagline, of course, is give them something to talk about, and so hopefully that's what we're going to be doing here during this next hour, is to give you guys something to talk about, something to think on, ponder upon on what's affecting our nation, especially all these things that are happening since the beginning of this administration. Yeah. We knew things were affecting us even during the Trump administration and prior, but now it seems like it's just getting much worse.
Yeah, man, it's picking up. We've been running around, we've been dealing with concerned citizens,
right.
Legislators, even from folks from other states have come down. And what we've seen is that the people of Texas are fed up, bro. They're right. Fed up. They're banding together.
Yeah.
And so you got coordination going on through, and I say growing on, but it is, it's going on and it's growing on through the state. And now there have been folks that have been involved, in various aspects with, with the border security issue, of course, we're talking about law enforcement and stuff, but now the citizens are actively engaged. They see that this is a failure on a massive scale, bro, by our politicians.
I agree.
I agree. Our politicians are entrusted. They've been, elected to deal with these issues, and they are massively failing at different levels, from the federal level on down.
Yeah. And
part of it, bro, we know that it's driven by ideology.
Yeah.
It's an ideological agenda that's being played out, and it's freedom versus bondage. It's life versus death.
Yeah.
And that's literally what it turns down. And it's also money.
Yeah.
Versus the will of the people.
So I'd say, as well, that it's no longer about political affiliation anymore. Yeah. It's not about being Republican or being Democrat or any other political party, conservative, liberal, whatnot. Yeah. To me, in my opinion, nowadays it's about freedom.
Yeah.
It's about freedom, right and wrong, evil versus good, right?
And if you go back to our roots, bro, when I say our roots, I say as a nation.
Yeah.
You go back to our nation, it's no longer about party, but it's about patriotism, like you said. And you're right, it's about life, death, freedom, and bondage. And, part of what's going on here, I'm sure you saw it in the Olympics, this young lady, an athlete, she's out there representing the United States, bro. Yeah. She turns her back on the flag. She comes out afterward, makes some comments about she felt she was trapped, that they snuck the national anthem on her. And so... you're out there representing our nation. That's what's taking place in our country, bro. Is that this is ideology? It right. is an attack on all fronts, and so we just decided to get together as patriots, as Texans. We decided to get together because America is our home. America is the land of freedom. Yeah. It's still that shining beacon. People right. are still flocking to the U.S.
I don't see anybody fleeing to Venezuela. I don't see anybody fleeing to
Cuba, China,
all these communist
Russia.
countries and socialist countries. And to give you a little bit of background, and again, we want to thank you for joining us. We're on Facebook Live. Hopefully tomorrow next week we'll be on YouTube Live, and then we're going to some other platforms as well. We're going to be actually turning this into a podcast that it'll be available for you on Podbean as well as Spotify and hopefully iTunes as well. So if you want the audio portion, you can get it, that evening or the next day after the broadcast itself. But to give you a little background about Frank and I, we've known each other for almost more than 20 years now. Yeah. I'm retired Border Patrol, United States Border Patrol. Frank is retired United States Border Patrol. Both veterans, United States Army, and go Army. No offense to anybody else, but go Army. State law. I worked in state law enforcement. I'm originally from the state of New Mexico, born and raised, and then moved over here to Texas more than 25 years ago. And
sorry about that, bro. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Sorry. And you moved to Texas more than 25 years ago to work as a United States Border Patrol agent. And then I met Frank shortly after that. It became part of the chaplaincy program, United States Border Patrol chaplaincy program, which we helped develop. So that was pretty exciting, right?
Yeah, bro. Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of where I kind of deviated a little bit with this athlete. Look, America is our home, right? And she's representing our home. So we're given opportunities in this country. We're put here by a creator God. And so we've been born and raised in the land of freedom of America. We are Christian Americans, and so I guess I see the argument, not necessarily that I agree with the argument that America is imperfect, bro. But right. Look, are there dark times in our history? Yes, but that is civilization. That's the fallen state of this world due to the sin nature. Yeah, Adam and Eve imposed that on their offspring, right? And so, but just like America came to this continent, our founding fathers came to this continent. You don't hear the outrage, bro. Europe is a land of conquest. Asia is a land of conquest. Right. And even our own hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, is a land of conquest. You had South America. You had tribes, nation, people, nations. Subjugating, conquering other neighboring nations, and then you come up through Central Mexico, Central America, and into Mexico, and you had the Mayans, just subjugating people. Oh yeah, killing them, murdering it. Conquest, subjugation, expansion. It's part of the human history.
And the reality is, I'm a believer. I'm a Jewish believer in Yeshua and the Messiah. You're a Christian.
Yes. Believer in Jesus, the Messiah.
Yeah. And so, but at the same part, we're both Americans. We're both Texans. We served for our country. Yes. We continue to serve our country, the United States Border Patrol. I believe I'm continuing to serve my country even as a retired United States Border Patrol agent. Reason being is because I care about this nation, and this is one of the reasons why we got together to bring this broadcast, was to inform people. I think one of the biggest issues that I have, Frank, today is how people are willfully ignorant to what is happening around us. Yeah. What's going on. In the time when I first came to the United States Border Patrol, of course, it's back under INS days, we were catching a lot of aliens, bro. Yeah. I mean, we were catching a lot of aliens, and it was busy, but it was nothing like this.
Yeah, it was nothing like this. The floodgates have been open, and of course, we've all seen it. And if you haven't, then you need to go research it. I'll definitely agree with what you're saying. Willfully ignorant, or easily fooled, bro. Yeah. Easily placated. You've got to drill down. People, you need to understand, politicians are not your friends. For the most part, there are a few fighters in there, few patriot, freedom-loving politicians. But the vast majority of them, once they get into that system, they are seduced, they're induced, they're pressured, and they buy into it. Right. And so that's why we need strong people of character. And I say strong Christians, man. Yeah. I say strong Christians, people who believe in Jesus, the Messiah, to get into office. And so, there's history that shows that even Clinton and Obama agreed with strong immigration control, with strong border security. And so it's not till this latest rendition, addition of Democrats who we can attribute this to Trump, bro. He exposed the mainstream media.
I think, yeah.
He exposed the rhinos in the Republican Party, the establishment element in the Republican Party, and he exposed the Democrat socialist agenda. Right. And so they came out, and so since post-Trump now, they see their opportunity, folks. They're going for the jugular vein, man. They're going to strangle us to death, and every time somebody said it, every time they get into position of power where they can control, in this sense, the Senate, the House, and the Oval Office. Yeah. They're going for Hail Marys every time. No, they're going for the end zone. And then what happens is whenever we get establishment swamp Republican folks in there, they think that they can play with the Democrats. And the Democrat, the socialist element, the far left element of the Democrat Party, bro, sees them as fools. They see them as fools. But don't lose sight of this fact, folks, is that the Uni Party, this group of people that are within both parties, elitists, money hungry, greedy people, power hungry people, they see us, their fellow citizens, Texans and Americans, as fools.
Oh yeah.
They see us as fools. They think we're stupid. And so that's why we're doing this, is because we're not gonna bow down. We're not gonna cave in, bro. We have a voice. God has given us intelligence. God has given us insight, discernment. The Spirit of God dwells in us, and so we're gonna call it out. And that's what Jesus did, bro. He came from heaven to earth. He became human, walked among us, and he railed. He fought at the chains that have been imposed on humanity through the systems of this world. I mean, he came in during Roman times, the Roman Empire, and he came in at a time when the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees controlled the Jewish people.
Right.
And so that, I think, I like to say, bro, that, hey, look, we got our founding fathers that crafted America out of a wilderness, and then we got our Texan founding fathers, but we have even further back a biblical role model for people to stand up against injustice, people to give their God-given voice, to stand for the weak, to stand for the oppressed, to be their champion, and to speak truth to power.
Right, and actually that's what the Bible calls us to do. The Bible calls us to speak for those who have no voice, who can't speak for themselves. And if you have the ability, if you have the opportunity, if you have the means, and I think one of the great reasons, Frank, I believe that America was founded, that God allowed America to be founded and established as a nation, was first to pray for Israel, to stand with Israel, and then also to pray for the rest of the nations, and to be also a beacon of hope.
Yes,
and we have since the inception of the United States of America, we've been a beacon of hope for everyone, for the whole world.
And we got this, got a lot of issues going on. I mean, folks, this stuff is interwoven. It's not isolated, compartmentalized stuff that's happening in our country. You can trace it back to its source, its roots, and it is as basic as good versus evil, bro. Right. I mean, that's what it is, good versus evil. And so that's why the left has fought so hard across generations now to destroy our history. Look, the stories of a people, the narratives, the ethos of a people are what's passed on from generation to generation. And so that's why they have sought to water down and destroy the American narrative, which is a country built on an ideal of freedom. Yes, we were under the British crown, but then when the monarch sought to suppress the God-given freedom, they rose up. And so in Texas right now, it is ground zero, and it is the southwestern border is ground zero, folks. But we live here in Texas, and I have no doubt that our fellow patriots up and down this border are doing what we're doing, is giving a voice to the issues. But look, we're also going to offer suggestions, man. There's a lot of people that sit back and they love to criticize keyboard warriors and Monday morning quarterback, armchair quarterbacks. But we will offer some suggestions, some solutions. If I were king for a day, if I were the governor for a day, this is what I would do. So we're definitely going to offer some suggestions on that. But look, as stakeholders in the Texas experience, as stakeholders in this life now. We have a voice. We're gonna say it. And of course, as Manny said, we have a history as ordained ministers, as members of the clergy, but also as border patrol agents, and as men, freedom-loving men with families to care and protect for. We're gonna speak up, and of course, in this culture, in this time that we live in, when you speak truth, either they love the truth or they hate the truth.
Right.
And so we put a bullseye.
Yeah.
We put a bullseye on ourselves.
We sure do, and I think right now there are many people out there, and it's amazing to me because I never thought it would happen in America that our leaders would want to suppress the truth. You read about it in other countries like China, communist Russia, all these, Cuba, Venezuela, other countries, but I never thought it would happen here. I spent many years in the Army and the military, and I'm sure you did too, and also in the United States Border Patrol with this idea in my head that I was protecting this nation from those things, from communism. I remember when I first joined the Army, that's our main goal was to keep communism away from our shores.
Yes.
And to study our enemy and how they operated, and then to stop socialism from coming to our shores. And now we have people, leaders, politicians. Of course, I don't even think they believe in socialism either. I think they don't believe in communism. What they want to do is just stay in power, and they're gonna embrace any ideology just to remain in power. And I think with President Trump, and I still call him President Trump. In my opinion, he's still my president. I believe this administration is an illegitimate administration. That's my personal opinion. Whether you agree with it or not, I believe it's an illegitimate administration. But when President Trump came into office, and I have to tell you, I tell a lot of people, because people say we're a Trump supporter. I voted for the man. And the reason I didn't vote for him because I liked him. Initially, I should tell you the truth, I had a hard time.
Yeah,
I had a really difficult time casting my vote for Trump. But in my opinion, it was either him or Satan. That's the way I look at it.
A con artist, a thief, a criminal.
Right. And so he's not a perfect man. He's not a perfect man, but he ended up doing the things that he said he was going to do. And it amazed me. It really, really shocked me, especially when he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. All these people, even Republicans around him, surrounding him, say, no, if you move the embassy to Jerusalem, it's going to start a war. He's like, well, let's see. And he did it. And he fulfilled what he said he was going to do. So here comes Biden and this administration, and tearing down everything that was happening, that was going well for this country. Our borders were secure, not the most secure, but the securest that I've seen in a long time. I don't know if you remember when he first came in, apprehensions went down significantly. I think almost 70 to 80%. Biden comes into office, and what happens? They go up almost more than 300%. Right now, I think I checked the stats yesterday. In this sector, it's 542%. Increase.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. But real quick before, look, folks, you said something, Manny, that I think we can definitely expand on. That even those in power don't really believe in the socialist ideology. And you're right, bro. Look, and that's why we're gonna bring to light, folks, that Texans, Americans need to wake up. That the current crop of politicians, from the federal down to the local level, and then it's a little bit different dynamic at the local level. We can dig into that, but it's about power, prestige, position, plata, money. That's what it's about, bro. And so, like those that don't necessarily believe, they're in it for selfish reasons, to get rich, to pad the nest, for their children and their grandchildren, which is a twisted, perverted sense of existence. Because when you're in a position of authority, you are to aid the people that look up to you as a leader. Under a bad king, the people groan. Under unwise, under tyrannical kings, the people groan. Paraphrasing the word of God. And so what you have are useful idiots to the leftist socialist agenda, to the demonic agenda that's in our country, bro. And those useful idiots are even Republican elected officials are being useful idiots to the agenda of the left. And so they're selling out our nation for personal profit and gain, their personal agendas. And I say that as a chairman for the Republican Party in Valverde County, and I say that as a committee man for the state Republican executive committee. And so the Republican Party needs to wake up. They need to wake up because there's a whole bunch of us Texans on the border. And if you go back to our history, the Texians were the people that came to settle. Yeah. But then you had the Tejanos, the people that lived here. So this is our land, Texans, and we're not going to put up with it. Right. And we've been sounding the alarm. We've been giving a notice to both parties. Democrats, you're not going to own us. You're not going to use our vote to get into power and and that's the leftist segment of it. You're not going to get into power to use us. And to the Republican establishment swamp, we see through you. We see right through you, and we're not going to be used by you neither. And so, but to get down to the border, bro, Kamala Harris, Kamala is Spanish for, man, what a mean one, or what a bad one.
How awful,
Yeah, how awful. What an awful one, yeah. She went down to El Paso. That's very low-hanging, easy pickings.
So was it really a visit to the border?
Not even that, bro. It's the same. She did, honestly, what Abbott did in Del Rio. Yeah. Honestly, bro. In that people banded together, people raised their voices. And remember, I've said, politicians respond to money, or they respond to pressure and pain, man.
Yeah.
And so the pressure, the voice of the American people said, hey, Kamala, even the mainstream media, why haven't you been at the border? Yeah. So she responded, she came down, but she did, in essence, what Governor Abbott did, came to appease, came to say, I've been here, and this is what I'm going to do. And so Kamala had her little press conference, that the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was there, Major Dorcas Mayorkas, he was there, and so it's platitudes, for the cameras, but they walk away with no real intent to fix the situation. Right. And so we can dig a little bit into why I'm honestly critiquing our governor.
And retiring, and before even a wall was put up, as long as we enforced the laws and regulations that we had in place and the policies, apprehensions were down, crossings were down, drug activity was down. And so it's amazing to me that all of a sudden we want to reestablish some of the things that if we would put into place before, they'd work. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that Texas has a right to its own sovereignty.
Yes.
It has a right. Texas has a right to its own sovereignty. Every state has a right to their own sovereignty. According to the Constitution, we have a right to our own sovereignty. Am I saying that we should go out and secede from the nation tomorrow? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we have a right to the people. We have, and the governor and the government here has a responsibility to the people to retain our sovereignty.
And so Kamala came, gave her platitudes, and so kind of to piggyback on what you said, and to kind of why am I saying that that Abbott came and gave his platitudes. Look, increasing the presence of law enforcement in our state, while on the surface is good, looks good, that's good optics.
Right.
The problem with that, folks, is the more people you have out there casting a wider net, to catch more people, unless the governor already has made plans to house and incarcerate, first of all, to put through the court criminal justice system all these people. Are you telling me that every district attorney, every county attorney throughout the state of Texas, on the border at least, has the adequate staffing, the adequate time on the docket, to put all these people that are being captured, bro? What are the stats on that? What is the bang for our buck, Texans? As many DPS troopers as we have on the ground, fish and game, parks and wildlife folks down here. Now we got Florida, Nebraska, and everybody and their mother sending law enforcement down here. Where are the stats, people? Where's the bang for our buck as Texas taxpayers and American taxpayers? And so we need to see what are the apprehension numbers. What are the numbers going to jail?
Right.
And what are the numbers of people going into the criminal proceedings, into the dockets of our various level judgeships. You know what I'm saying, Manny?
Yeah.
I mean it's hard facts. So he. If that's not taking place, people, if Texas is not prosecuting all these increased number of people that are being apprehended in this car chases and all this other stuff, if Texas is not incarcerating them, putting them through the legal criminal hearing process, then they're still being turned over to Border Patrol.
Right.
And so we had the chief, the new chief, Raul Ortiz, was just down in Del Rio last Thursday. And so... he spoke and basically they're still catching, receiving these apprehended people from other agencies, and they're being processed. And because we don't have this jail space anymore, normally Border Patrol folks, Border Patrol never was intended to permanently incarcerate people. All our facilities are processing, holding facilities. They had time frames that they needed to get people in and have them out of custody within a certain amount of time frames.
Either through deportation or through incarceration.
Turning them over. In some cases, like unaccompanied alien children, that were turned over to the ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So they're turned over there in the Health and Human Services.
Right.
And so that's where they were turned over. And if I say something wrong, correct me, bro. But anyways, that was the normal venting for Border Patrol apprehensions under these Biden times. That process is now, 2, 3, 500,000 fold crazy.
Yesterday, Del Rio sector had 1,500 in custody.
Wow.
1,500 in custody.
In custody that they're trying to process.
And so there's
to lessen the optics, people, and that's what I meant about the smoke and mirrors. So what's the smoke and mirrors going on here? That these people are being released, not into Del Rio, not into the border communities. They're being hauled via buses and vans and airplanes, even out of Laughlin Air Force Base, in one instance here, in one case, into the heartland of America. Because more law enforcement means more people caught, means more people processed, means more people released. And so, folks, I just kind of shake my head when people are cheering that aspect, Manny.
Yeah.
Hey, more people getting caught, more fishing game in Florida, alligator hunters or whatever down here.
But who has to process these illegal aliens that are coming through?
It's still Border Patrol. It's my understanding that there's some processors that are being trained at the academy.
Right. There is, and I think they're on their second class or whatnot. But it's not really going to affect any immediate change right now.
They're still just all that is making the process faster.
It's going to make the process faster for illegal aliens to be released into our community.
Yes. So when Chief Ortiz was here, basically what I heard in a nutshell was, we are gearing up, working with our law enforcement partners, state, local partners. We're sharpening up the system. We're fine tuning the system to make it more expedient,
right, their economy, not our economy. How much money? Do you remember when all the money that would go back? I mean,
Yeah, and through Western Union and Walmart and
right?
stuff.
None of the monies that illegal aliens make in this nation, hardly any, stays here.
Yeah, to live here, pay rent, buy groceries while
Yeah.
they're here, but they'll
Right.
send it back.
And then every January or during the winter months, it's this mass migration back to their countries of origin, so they can set up their homes and so that's what it always amazed me that here we had a lot of these people like claim credible fear, and then we catch them the following year again after they just claim credible fear, and then I would ask them, well, why did you go back? Oh, well, I had to go back to
vacation, birthday, funeral,
exactly, or to pay buy this, buy that. So what I'm saying, folks, is that if you think that it stimulates the economy and you're buying into the lie that this administration is telling you, it doesn't stimulate the economy. Matter of fact, it weakens the economy. Crime goes up. I think sexual services, sexual predator apprehensions have gone up more than 2,000% since this administration has come into office. This is amazing, folks. And I think it's important that you educate yourself in what is happening here. It's not just Mexicans coming across. When I first got in, we had mostly Mexicans coming across to find work and to work in the farms. Sometimes I remember they would even call and turn themselves in, right? So they would get a ride back to Mexico. It's completely different now. We're having people that are coming in wanting to infiltrate our way of life and take advantage of our resources that this administration is so willing to give away, Frank. And yet we have illegal aliens staying in hotels, apartments, yet our homeless veterans
on the streets.
It's incredible. And you probably heard these arguments on other conservative broadcasts and whatnot, and we may be rehashing some things. But here at the local level, here in Del Rio, I think is important because we're so close to the border. The crisis is happening here, right in our backyard. And so many people are uninformed or just turning their backs on it and are willing to embrace the ideology of this administration. And it's amazing to me, Frank.
You said something, kind of, and I'm looking at the clock here, man, because I don't want to, we got a little bit. We can talk for all day, but, part of it, Manny, you said something that is very critical, I think, about what Trump did. See, Abbott, flooded the state, the border region with DPS and other, Texas law enforcement agencies. And now we've got law enforcement agencies from other states here, and they're all catching more to process faster, release faster.
Right.
And so just a couple of days ago, they started working through the Texas version of the Army Corps of Engineers, the Texas, Engineer Corps, whatever. They're bulldozing some land here in this county. But folks, Del Rio sector alone had about 210 miles of border with Mexico. The Del Rio sector, that's one of 5 border patrol sectors in Texas. That still leaves over 1,000 miles of border, Texas border with Mexico. So, yeah, folks, they're bulldozing some land here. They're going to put up some kind of fence. All fences do, and this is border patrol.
Common knowledge.
Common knowledge in border patrol terminology, and in our strategy, strategic, analysis. The fences they just push to the sides. They just redirect traffic. It's not. All you're doing is just causing it to go to another place.
Which basically was the idea behind the wall.
The wall. Starting out in at the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
Pushing California traffic into Arizona.
Yeah.
And you had the increased deaths and all that, and then they started down in the Rio Grande Valley as well.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that, folks, because you got the increased law enforcement presence, and you got Abbott doing some scraping dirt here for some kind of eventual down the road fence, which unless you're looking at 1,000+ miles, of fencing, all you're doing is just pushing that human tidal wave, that human current of movement to either side. And so you said something about Trump affected commerce, threatened commerce with Mexico.
Right.
And so that's what we've been saying. Very easy, Governor Abbott. What you need to do is you need to transfer the pain from Texans, from the American Texan taxpayer, transfer the pain to the government of Mexico, because Mexico is complicit in this. Mexico is allowing the cartels to operate openly, brazenly, with disregard for human life. Once again, people are horrified because they're just finding out about what happens all the time in Mexico. That these cartels are bloodthirsty, inhuman, devilish people.
Right.
And so the government of Mexico is allowing them to operate with impunity, openly, in the open. It's a way of life in Mexico. So Governor Abbott needs to transfer the pain to the government of Mexico. And the way you do that is, instead of all these troopers catching all these people just to process and release eventually, these troopers need to be transferred to our 25 ports of entry, 25 land border ports. And they need to stifle, choke, and shut down commercial traffic between Mexico and the United States.
I agree.
And so you got, what's called within the DPS, the Division of Weights and Measures. And so what they do is they deal with everything having to do with commerce, with 18-wheeler traffic and commerce on our highways. And so you get these troopers down to the ports of entry, and you inspect with a fine-tooth comb you every vehicle coming out of Mexico. It won't take long, folks. One day you'll have 200-300 vehicles backed up at the smaller ports, and then at the major ports like Laredo, which has 5 ports of entry, El Paso, which has another 4 or 5, and the Rio Grande Valley, which has 4 or 5 down, spread out down there, folks. You will back up traffic into Mexico for miles. And so the government of Mexico will start screaming, and the companies will start screaming. So let's talk a little bit about the companies, man. Because these are American corporations that abandoned Americans, that abandoned Texans, abandoned Tejanos living in these border regions, lower a socioeconomic situation down here. They instead of offering jobs to Americans, they took the jobs to exploit the slave wage in Mexico. Right? I mean, what they pay an American in one day is a week's pay down there. Right. We can drill down into stats at a future broadcast here, but the transfer of the pain from Texans to the government of Mexico and the American corporations, because what takes place at that point, bro, is they start screaming. They start screaming, just like Texans were screaming, just like America were screaming about the situation here. We're screaming to Abbott, seal it down, shut it down. Remember, we had a rally in Dimmitt County, Carrizo Springs, and that was, we had the placard, seal the border, shut down the migrant centers down there. And just like the way America screamed and Kamala went down to El Paso, when Mexico screams and when the American corporations scream, they can go yell at Abbott, and all Abbott's going to say, look, Mexico, you're allowing yourself to be used by the cartels. Right. Take it up to Biden. And so when you have the government of Mexico putting pressure on Biden, you have American corporations putting pressure on Biden and his administration. I really think that would work, right, bro.
I agree. Trump proved it.
Yes, he proved it.
Trump proved it. And there were some things that I thought that's not going to work, like the tariffs.
Yes.
I didn't think that was going to work.
And very heavy-handed.
Right, very heavy-handed, and it worked.
Yeah.
And then when he threatened to shut down the border, completely shut down the border.
Yeah.
It worked. Yeah. They started enforcing their own laws at their southern border with Guatemala.
Yes.
They started enforcing their immigration laws, which, by the way, I think a lot of people don't understand that Mexico's immigration laws are stricter.
Yeah.
Than they are here in the United States.
And they're allowing this to happen.
And they're allowing it to happen
because they could be much stricter, but they're letting it happen.
Right.
Look, folks. Hey, and I have no doubt that people in our audience that are listening, have relations with Mexico, family, live over there. The government of Mexico is not our friend. The government of Mexico does not care for American interest, the American way of life, and so we need to transfer the pain, because we know that politicians listen to money or they respond to pressure and pain, and so that's one solution. Now this other one here, and I think that if this 2 suggestions were to be implemented immediately, bro, there would be immediate results.
I think so.
By the end of the day, there would be immediate results. Even if the end of the first day, it's just the phones ringing off the hook at the governor's mansion and with the Biden administration.
Right.
Because if you shut down commerce at the ports, what's going to happen? The ports of entry, American, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, they're going to start screaming to up their chain, and it's going to get to the desk of the clown, Alejandro Mayorkas, Major Dorcas here. It's going to get to his desk, and he's going to run over to Kamala's office, and the staff. They're going to talk to Biden. But the second suggestion is another point of conflict, and some measure of conflict, Manny, is good. Yeah. Christ came into the world, and he created conflict.
Right. And the reality is, when you read the scriptures, faith grew out of during conflict. Faith grew during persecution.
Yes.
If we affect Mexico's commerce or any other country's commerce, it's going to hurt for a little bit. It's going to hurt for a few days.
Yeah.
On our side.
Yeah.
But the reality is, once they start enforcing their own laws, it picks back up again.
Yeah.
Trump proved it.
Yes.
And I'm going to keep referring to Trump because it pained me so much that this administration simply did away with Trump's policies out of hatred, not out of protection for our country, not out of concern for our country. And this is the way I see
Not even because it was bad policy.
Not even because it was bad policy. It was good policy. Now we see Biden scrambling to affect the wall again, whatever, how that's going to be. I listened to Trump the other day, and it's amazing to me that now they're going to try to call back these contractors, and these contractors are like, really? And who's going to make a fortune now? But anyway.
They already got paid.
They already got paid.
They've been getting paid.
And so what's amazing to me is that out of hatred, and I think this is why a lot of people even voted against Trump, simply because they believe the lies of the media, and out of hatred. In traditional Judaism, we have a saying: one of the greatest sins is baseless hate, because it leads to murder. It leads to all kinds of other things, and so I think this administration came in, I think, illegitimately, and through baseless hate. And did away with these policies. Trump's policy of remain in Mexico was amazing. It was amazing because it worked. It worked. Even without the wall, I think it would have worked.
And so let's not let off the hook here, Manny. That hate also was in the hearts of the establishment swamp rhinos in the Republican Party. Remember, folks, never forget what they did to Trump on January 7th, I say. The day after January 6th, it was the incident that took place at the White House, at the Capitol building, but also that was the day that our Congress voted, to certify the Electoral College votes, and now it's coming to light that the fraud did take place. Look at Arizona. Look at Georgia. I think it's Wisconsin or Michigan. Michigan. It came to light, bro. So on January 6th, 75 million Americans who voted for Trump knew he was a legitimate president. We had some clowns in our Congress that didn't look at the situation like a third grader would look at it.
And I'm talking about, and I think we're referring to Republican clowns.
Yes.
Rhinos are people from our own party, or the party that I vote for. Even locally, Frank, locally. And I think this is what disappoints me. And I'm gonna have to call them out because I live in this district. I'm a voter in Congressional District CD 23, and sadly, the present representative Tony Gonzalez voted for that commission. That January 6th commission. I think people don't realize, if you don't go and research it. The January 6th commission is so dangerous because it can be used against average Americans.
Yes.
That type of commission, that type of order that Tony Gonzalez voted for. Betrayed Trump, I believe. Betrayed the Republican Party, betrayed the state of Texas and the people of CD 23, because it can be used against people like you and me.
And to January 6th, there's two issues. Remember, there was the objection to the Electoral College, which Senator Cruz led.
Right.
And 6 Texas Republicans voted with the socialists on that.
Right.
To certify the results, whereas Cruz and 16 Texas congressmen voted for the objection. In other words, send the results back to their states, in this case Arizona and Pennsylvania, send them back so that they can the state legislature can look at it. And so that's what took place, and the Americans were furious. They were ready to leave the party, bro.
Right.
They were ready to form the Patriot Party. Was the main one everybody was talking about.
Which I'm not sure. To tell you the truth, I'm not really crazy about a third party at this point in time.
Yeah. No, I mean, but there's a variation of that,
right?
A third party, but we can get into that in a little bit. But real quick, the reason we went into all that, I forget now. We've been talking, but anyways, the point number two, bro, has to do with conflict,
right?
And basically, the other thing that Abbott needs to do here is to, there's no other word for it, blockade.
Right.
The transportation of these people.
Oh, we were talking about on the January 6th mission how it's going to affect you and I, average Americans.
Yeah.
I
forget. I was gonna make a point, man. You know, I've written something down, but it's cool. Oh yeah. So he exposed they believe the media, they believe the establishment swamp. But the second point, folks, is that Abbott needs to blockade the transportation of these people on our highways, right. What that entails is direct conflict between Abbott and federal authorities and the non-government organizations that are rolling down the road and are flying out of our airports now, out of our military bases. These people are being ferried out of the area and transported into the heartland of America, and so he needs to blockade. And so how do you do that? I mean, you got to stop these vehicles from traveling 1 inch on Texas highways.
Exactly, and I agree. Once you start doing that, again, it's going to affect commerce. You got, there's when I was in the military, there's always a plan.
Yeah.
A plan of attack, and we have, the scriptures tell us and teach us that we have to be as innocent as doves and wise as serpents.
Yeah.
In the sense that we have to know how our enemy, what hurts our enemy.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it's commerce. Yeah. It's money. It's their wallets.
Yes.
And so, yes, it could hurt for a little bit here.
It would hurt,
but but if we continue this in the long term, people are gonna remain unemployed. Unemployment rate is at the highest it's ever been in decades.
Yeah.
Inflation, I think, is at the highest since the 70s.
Yeah.
Right. And so, in a matter of months, oh my gosh, we're only in June.
Yeah.
We haven't hit July yet.
We can't sustain 4 years of this, folks.
We can't.
I mean, we can't sustain 4 years of it. Now, so Abbott, you need to strangle commerce, and you need to strangle transportation. You need to strangle movement, and so people, what are you saying? Armed conflict between DPS and border? No, of course not. But look, these are our highways, and so once you're off a federal installation, there's a certain part of the roadway that becomes public state property,
right?
And so it's a very vivid visual image, to blockade movement by transportation vehicles, federal, non-government, whatever, to block them in, bro.
Right.
To block them in. But look, there come moments in time when you have to take decisive action. The founding of our nation, the Boston Tea Party, was a decisive moment in time. Texas Fight for Freedom, come and take it, was a decisive moment in time. And so Governor Abbott, this is a decisive moment in Texas American history. And so his measures are piecemeal. They're just very timid measures that are supposed to be a bunch of fluff, right. A bunch of busy work, but really in substance, it's not meat.
Yeah.
It's not meat. Yeah. Strangle commerce and strangle movement on our Texas highways.
I'm gonna, I have to be honest with you. I did appreciate when any leader comes down and you hope that they would hear the voices of the people. But I think what turned me off, and I think what kind of upset me, is when he mentioned that he was going to establish a task force and they were going to be meeting every 2 weeks.
So bureaucratic.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so they're not really going to try to make this problem go away. They're going to have meetings every 2 weeks for observation purposes, right? That they're still coming across
assessment and observation,
right?
Redirection, whatever, man.
But eventually there has to be a plan, right? There has to be a plan of attack. There has to be an offensive.
Yeah.
And so and again, I'm not talking about armed conflict. Don't get us wrong. Somebody else is going to be posting on like, "Hey, Frank and Manny, I talk about it live," or encouraging.
That's not what we're saying.
That's not what we're saying. But there has to be a plan of attack in the sense that you have to go after what hurts the most. And in this world right now, it's commerce. Yeah. And so I agree with you, Frank. I agree with you.
And movement, bro. I mean, so here we get into the hypotheticals. If I was governor for a day, this is what I would do, bro. Yeah. I would reassign my troopers to the ports of entry. And slow down traffic. Slow it down. The ports are going to get mad. Travelers are going to get mad. There's going to be pain with businesses. But look, I talked to one of the Abbott staffers, bro, and he said, well, the mom and pops, look, this commerce that's coming across, it's manufacturing that's taking place in Mexico, bro. And over here, basically, what American corporations, for the most part, now there's exceptions, like there is to everything. It's just assembly or a final assembly, maybe, and packaging, and then distribution. Right. So it's packaging and distribution. How many mom and pops really businesses are affected? Profit off them.
Right, and the reality is, even if they are affected, it's going to be for the short term. But if
there's already pain.
Right, there's already pain, and if we can, COVID hit. None of the bigger corporations, they recovered. Yeah, they recovered.
Mom and pops are decimated.
They're still hurting, and some have even.
Abbott did that. Right? He shut down Texas.
And the reality, and the reality in that as well, Frank. Yeah, it'll hurt in the short term, but if we continue like this, if we continue like this, it's only been 6 months, folks. It's not even 6 months since this guy's been in office. Yeah. And he's destroying this country. Yeah.
There will be no America.
There will be no America. Yeah. And Ronald Reagan said, if America falls, it'll be the last hope for the world. Yeah. Of course, I believe Messiah is the only hope for the world.
Yes.
He's the only hope.
He's our true master.
Right.
Yes.
And the reality is too is that people of faith, I think, and especially the clergy as well, people from the pulpit, you need to start encouraging your people to get out there, to vote, to have a voice. I understand. I know that Messiah is coming back. I believe he's returning. Yeah. With all my heart. I believe there's a better place that we're going to, where there's no more pain, there's no more tears. We're going to live in a perfect society. But until he returns, there is such a thing called self-preservation. There's a thing. There's also human rights. Yeah. Doing what is right. This government that is in. People say, well, they always tell me. I get in a lot of discussions. Well, render under Caesar what are to Caesar's. This is not about that. Yeah. This is not about that. This is about freedom, living. I want my children to have children, and I want those children to grow up in a free nation, the nation that you and I believe in, the America that you and I believe in.
So and so what happens, bro? We're kings for a day, governor for a day. Stop the commerce, and get those big heavy duty Department of Transportation, flatbed carriers, bulldozers, and blockade traffic away from these processing centers. Right. Blockade the movement of people away from this centers. A
lot of those vehicles that are coming across, Frank, they do not meet the safety standards.
They've been given waivers.
Right.
So hey, look, I mean, if that was a federal waiver, or the state needs to implement its own measures, these vehicles are unsafe. That's commerce, bro. But I'll be more specific, man. I'll just say it. Blockade the movement from Border Patrol processing centers. Don't allow people to leave. It's going to backlog. See, folks, what you hear Tony Gonzalez and all these politicians, well, we're releasing the pressure. Even Chief Ortiz says, we're taking these aliens away from the border. Why? So we don't see them, but then they still continue being an issue and a problem in the heartland of America? No. So the pressure needs to be backwards. The pressure needs to be into Mexico. The pressure needs to be into the federal processing facilities. Let the pressure build there. Biden is not talking to Governor Abbott, and even if he does talk to Governor Abbott needs to have the spine, the backbone, the cojones to stand up to Biden and say, look, you implement the stay-at-home policy to begin with, right off the bat. Right. Stay in Mexico. Give our federal entities a chance to stand up. Asylum hearing, centers or whatever. But we know that the Biden administration, it's an ideologue administration. They're going to push for open borders. Right. They're going to push for amnesty. Yeah. So it is a battle of will here, people. Yeah. It's a battle of wills.
And I appreciate your comments that we're seeing right now on the broadcast. We truly appreciate your comments. as well. We're going to be putting up an email site here pretty soon, a website as well that you can email comments and questions to us. And maybe we can interact live with you as well.
Yeah.
Again, this is our first broadcast. We're pretty excited about it. And so as we continue to evolve with this broadcast, it's going to be a little bit more interactive. And so I agree. Yeah, bottleneck. What we have Roar or Shach that says bottleneck traffic for at least a week.
Yeah, dude. I one day phones will be ringing. People will be amazed. People will be scared, shocked, angry. Right. Let me just say this, Manny. I know we're looking to wrap it up here, but right now the federal government is doing nothing malfeasant. They're working against America and Americans, and our they're even seeking to strangle the life out of our corporate body. Texas, it's in Texas court right now. Right. It's in Abbott's court, and the governors up and down this border. It's in their court. And Governor Abbott, be the leader that Texans want you to be. Be the leader that America believes Texas is. Be the leader, because if they fail, bro, what's left in the gap? Right. The people. And I gotta tell you, it's the people.
And I have to tell you, I don't think many people realize, Frank, how important the state of Texas is. Yeah. It's a battleground state. Texas sets the standard for the majority of the United States. Yeah. It's amazing. I think that's why we have so many people from blue states moving over here to try to change this state. Yeah. To try to make it blue. California went down in population. Yeah. It kind of worked against them.
Yeah. New York,
because they lost a couple seats.
Yeah.
Right.
Electoral college.
Right. So it worked kind of in our favor. But more and more people are coming to this state to try to change it and take freedoms away.
And the shame in that, Manny, is that. That's still, honestly, bro, that's the way it used to be. Don't mess with Texas. Right. Now it's slapped Texas in the face, honestly, bro. Yeah. And part of that, honestly, I put the blame on politicians and specifically in Republican elected officials. Right. Because we have owned this legislature for 18 years, man. We have owned the governorship now for at least 2 or 3 terms. How long has Abbott been in office, bro? Yeah. And we've owned it as Republicans. Yeah. And we're dropping the ball. So how can we tell people to leave the Democrat Party and come into this cancerous body, which is the Republican Party? We need radical surgery, bro.
We do.
We need surgery.
And we got a couple of minutes, and we're going to wrap this up. But we encourage your comments. Shireen Howell, I really appreciate your comments. Seth, we really appreciate your comments as well. Thank you so much for joining us here on Tacobout It Live with Frank and Manny. We're going to be meeting every Tuesday, God willing. Every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Just talking about, our discussions, eating our tacos, drinking our coffee. Hopefully, we're also going to be having some merch here pretty soon as well. And so we hope that this would grow. So we appreciate your encouragement, your prayers, as we're coming at this from a perspective that not many people have. Frank and I both been in the military, both been in the United States Border Patrol. I have over 30 years of experience. We're both clergy. I'm a rabbi. He's an ordained minister. So we have a perspective, I think, that is very, very viable to what's happening.
Yeah, as border residents, as border patrol agents, as citizens living here in Texas, as patriots.
As patriots. That personally, I've had enough. I've had it. Yeah. But again, and if you're a minister, a rabbi, clergy, I encourage you, get out from behind your pulpit. Don't use it as a shield, and say something. You need to say something and encourage your people. Vote for the right people. I'm going to say this right now with this next primary that's coming up. We have a person in CD23 who I believe is a rhino. Oh yeah. And we'll talk about it next broadcast. Yeah. We'll get into a little bit more. And if there's something bothering you, we're going to talk about local government as well, and things that are happening here. Get involved. Get informed. Don't sit there and believe everything that we're telling you, or believe everything.
Do your research.
Do your research. It doesn't take much. There's a lot of suppression going on right now, but go out there, get your research done, and God willing, we can affect change for the better.
Yeah, and it starts at the local level. Let me say this real quick. Tonight, 6:30 p.m. At Rudy's, the executive committee for the Republican Party is meeting. The public's open. Come on in, 6:30, Rudy's in the little meeting area. The GOP local party is meeting. We'll be talking about some stuff there, so show up. And then you got to get involved. As a local candidate, there's a bunch of vacancies, upcoming
School board.
School board, hospital district, city council, and the county.
Right?
Yeah, commissioners and paid positions that are elected positions within the county. We already have a candidate, a person that's thinking of running for mayor, and at least another 2 or 3 for the city council that I believe are conservative. So we'll be definitely talking with them. A hospital district's going to have about another 3 or 4 slots. Right. And the county has 13 slots. Only 2 of them are Republican. Wow. So 11 elected positions are held by Democrats. Wow. Now, we'll get into it. Some of those Democrats are conservative because just of their upbringing. But that fallacy that you have to run as a Democrat to get elected, that we need to poke holes in that.
Yeah, we do. So, again, we want to thank you so much for joining us today, this morning on Tacobout It Live. Next week, again, Tuesday morning, Taco Tuesday, 8 a.m. God willing, we had some technical difficulties this morning. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be over them next week. Yeah. But we ask that you would join us, bring some tacos, get some coffee, and we'll give them something to talk about. And so,
talk about it.
So I'm Manny Rodriguez, and with Frank Lopez. Again, we appreciate you being with us this morning. So we'll say, God bless you, God bless America, God bless Texas.
Stay alert, stay alive.